Greetings, class. This is Professor Brown, and this tutorial video is going to be for our Lab 4 in CST-158 Contemporary Operating Systems. And Lab 4 is going to cover how to install Windows Server 2019. So I'm going to do this for the static machine, which is the harder machine to do, and then you can repeat the process for the DHCP machine, which basically you just don't do the IP configuration. It's done automatically for you. All right, so you can go ahead and in Canvas download the lab document. Let me share my screen because I have that up. Screen one. And I plan on pausing a lot today as we wait for VMware to do its stuff and Windows to do its stuff in the installation. So I have this up here. I'm going to be going through this step by step by step. I'll move this to my other monitor so I can read it. And we're going to get started in making a new VM shell. So actually, as I'm going through this, I'm doing this in VMware. I'm not doing this in VirtualBox. I tried doing this in VirtualBox previously, and it horrifically failed. That's because VirtualBox doesn't do networking the same way as VMware. VMware does networking much more cleanly, I guess you would say, than Oracle VirtualBox does. So I'm going to show you how to do this in VMware. Now, you can install these servers one at a time over the next two labs, this lab and lab 5, and then shift gears and go into NetLab, and you can do the rest in NetLab, and you shouldn't have a problem. Or if you want to, you can keep doing this in VMware, and that's perfectly fine. That's how I'm going to do all the demonstrations this semester is going to be in VMware. So our objective is to build this topology, right? This should already be there. So this is like your home router at your house, I hope. This is your host machine that is running VMware. And then you have the 3 VMs, okay? And just kind of pay attention to the IP addressing that we have here, 192.168.1.200, and so forth. All right, so a couple of prerequisites that you need to understand. First off, VMware installation. So we went through that in a previous lab, lab 1, I believe. So you should have already done that. If you've not done lab 1, stop, come back to this after you've completed lab 1. Secondly, you need to make sure that your networking is set up correctly. Just do a sanity check of your virtual networking. How we do that is in Windows. I'll click the Windows box here, and I'm just going to type in VMnet, all one word, VMNET, and that should bring up Virtual Network Editor. Click on that. All right, so you should have at least 2 networks. VMnet 1 and VMnet 8. We're going to work on VMnet 8. Now pay particular attention to the subnet address. The subnet address. If yours does not look like this, you need to change it. All right, so we're looking at 192.168.1.0. If it's not that way, come down here, change settings, click yes when that Windows pops up. Go to VMnet 8. And where it says subnet IP, make sure it is 192.168.1.0, subnet mask 255.255.255.0. Okay, so make sure that that is it. Then click on DHCP settings, and you should have your DHCP settings set up something like this as well. 192.168.1.128, 192.168.1. I even have this wrong. Should be 199. Okay. Don't worry about the defaults down here. Click OK. And that's it. Then you're all set up. Make sure that that NAT stays there. Go ahead and click apply and then OK. It will stop your services, restart your services, click OK, and we're ready to rock and roll. All right, the next thing you need to do is you must obtain a copy of 2019 standard. Okay, server 2019 standard. So I believe let's copy this and put it into a browser. There we go. So that link takes you here, which is good. You want to download the ISO file. You're gonna go through and fill this information in. Give them a bogus email. Give them a bogus name if you want to. This is just something that you have to do. Yeah, fine. Job role. You can go ahead and put student in there. That's fine. I give them a bogus phone number. Don't check this box. Oh, country code, United States, fine, whatever. All right. The next thing is going to say, okay, what version I want ISO 64-bit. And I'll start downloading. Okay. So we're going to let that download and then we're going to come back. So I'll see you in just a moment. Okay, our download has completed. I'm going to go to my downloads folder, and your file, that 2019 server standard, should look something like that, really big, like over 5 gigs. I'm going to move this, cut it, and move it to my virtual machine folder. Your virtual machine folder should automatically be created. And if it is not, create the folder. Under Documents, Virtual Machines, you should have this virtual machine folder right here. Okay, if you don't, create a folder called Virtual Machines, and this is where you will keep track of all your VMs. I'll paste that in there. Okay, we're all set up. Now the next thing I need to do, back to the lab document. So we've downloaded that. Let's go ahead and create our shell. All right, we're going to go ahead and create our VM shell. If you've already done this, that's fine. Just going to put this over here so I can read everything, and I'm going to be going through this. I'll let you know where I am at, when I am at, etc. So I'm under Windows Server 2019 VM shell adjustments. You can clone it a second time or follow along. I'm going to go ahead and do a file, new virtual machine, and it's going to be custom. It's going to be version 16. I'm going to install the operating system later. It's going to be Windows Server 2019. And I'm going to just make this static. I'm just going to add static after that name. Now here's a question. Do I do BIOS or UEFI? I think in the document, you can use, it says to use BIOS. Yeah, there it is. This is step number G, or step letter G on page 12 of the document. I'm going to switch that to BIOS. It'll just be a cleaner install if you do it with BIOS instead of UEFI. Click next. Now for processors, I'm going to do 2-in-1. So 2 processors, 1 core each, or I could do 1 and 2. That will be just fine as well. 2-in-1 or 1 and 2. For RAM, you need to kind of understand how much RAM you have on your system. So if you don't understand how much RAM you have on your system, look under my computer. I'm going to go ahead and go with 2 gigs for this machine. It should be just fine for what we're going to do. I can always increase it later. I'm going to use the NAT network. I think I'm going to use LSI. Pretty sure I'm going to use LSI. Yep, LSI. And then the disk type. I'm going to switch to SCSI. All right. You can use in MVE if that's fine. I just have had a more success rate using the SCSI emulator than the other ones. And I'm going to create a new virtual disk. It's going to be split into multiple files. I do not have to make it 60 gigs. You can, it depends on how much disk space you have. If you can support 60 gigs, do 60 gigs. But since it's going to be split into multiple files, it will grow organically. It's not going to take up 60 gigs right out of the gate. So I'm just going to click next. I'm going to keep the default name and click finish. All right, and now there it is. It's all set up. Woohoo! Now the server's not installed. Don't think that the server's installed. We're not done yet. That was just the shell. We're going to go into the settings, edit the settings of the Windows 2019 server. And under CD/DVD, SATA, we're going to use an ISO image file. And we're going to browse to that ISO image file under virtual machines that we downloaded it. Right? Remember, we downloaded Windows 2019 server package, that ISO file. We're going to point to that and we'll click open. And that's pretty much it. Make sure connect the power on's on. Click OK. And now we're ready to install Windows. So there we go. We're going to install Windows. And this is going to go really fast for me because I have a pretty higher end machine. It may not go as fast for you. Don't worry, don't freak out. And that BIOS setting did work, so make sure you use that BIOS setting, not UEFI. And this is going to be default. And I'm going to click on install now. This warning that you have here is about VMware tools. You can just go ahead and click the X for that right now. So this is very important, what type of stuff you're going to use. All right, standard evaluation. You want the standard evaluation desktop experience. If you do not choose the desktop experience, it is going to install PowerShell only. And it's going to be very difficult. You're not going to be able to follow along in the labs. So make sure you select desktop experience. Next. Make sure that you're installing this in the VM. Don't ever do this on your computer because you'll lose all of your data, except the EULA. This is going to be a custom install. All right, not an upgrade. This is a custom install. So select custom install. Your hard drive is automatically detected. Just click next. And it will install. So I'm gonna pause right now. I'm gonna come back when it has check marked all these things and we're done with finishing up. So I will see you in a few minutes. Okay, so we have gone through those check boxes. It's rebooted. You've seen the blue window on the desktop and should reboot again, which is fine. It might reboot a couple of times. There you go. So when we get to this point in our document, it did not ask for a license key. Some versions will, some versions won't. So if you get this screen, you shouldn't get this screen if you downloaded that ISO file that I had. We accepted the EULA, we did all this. Here we go. So custom settings. This is where we're gonna set the password. This is the password I want you to go with. CST-CCC 2019 exclamation point. Right? CST-CCC 2019 exclamation point. It's in your documentation. Go. So we're going to type that in twice. Capital C, capital S, capital T. Little c, little c, little c. 2019 exclamation point. Capital C, capital S, capital T. Little c, little c, little c. 2019 exclamation point. That's going to be the password for the administrator on this server. Click finish. It'll finalize the settings, and you are all set. You are all set. This is pretty much the end of the lab. So to do Control Delete, there's a couple different ways you can do this in VMware. You can go up here to VM and do Send Control Delete. Or if you want the keyboard shortcut, it is Control Alt Insert. Control Alt Insert. If you hit Control Alt Delete, your PC is going to pick that up and it's going to like go to like your control panel and all kinds of other great. We don't want that, right? So Control Alt Insert or VM, send Control Alt Delete. Type that password in, capital C, capital S, capital T, little c, 2019, exclamation point, and you're logged in. All right. So your network is going to show up here. Go ahead and click yes for now. We're going to go ahead and click on local server here. And then we're going to go ahead and do Ethernet 0 IPv4 address assigned. All right. We're going to get to that and we're going to right click on it and go to properties. And we're going to select IPv4 and select properties and set this up to where we have the IP address set correctly. So I am on page 44 of the document, or almost done. So this is where we're going to put in the IP address. So 192.16. Make sure that you are in the right space. 192.168.1.200. The subnet mask is going to be just that, and then 1.1 should be your gateway. If you do not get internet access, one of the things I want you to troubleshoot is come back here and change that .1 right here to .2. Everybody's system's a little bit different. Sometimes it works with .1, sometimes it works with .2. It depends on your home router. It can be a little quirky. For your DNS, just go ahead and set that to 4.2.2.2 and 8.8.8.8. These are public DNS servers by Google. And that should work. We'll hit that. We'll hit close. All right. Go ahead and click yes on that network. Still says no internet. Let's do a little troubleshooting here. Nope. Okay. So if you get that, let's go ahead and go back to properties. This is really good. And we're going to change that default gateway from .1 to .2. So like I said, some people's systems, it works. Some people's, there it goes. So yeah, with me, my router is wanting to use .2 today and not .1. So that little warning sign down here should go away. And then a couple of things I want you to do are what I suggest you do. Okay. I absolutely despise Internet Explorer and using it on a server is a pain. So from here, download Firefox or Chrome. I'm going to go ahead and just download Chrome, Google Chrome download. Download Chrome. What? Oh boy. So we'll download Firefox instead. Something is blocking it here. They want you to use Internet Explorer for the most part, but that's fine. We can come back to that later. It's not important right now. Let's finish this up. All right, so we're now at the very end. Couple things. You can now right click on the Windows icon in the lower left and select shut down the server. Repeat the steps for the installation of your clone server. So you need to do this a second time for your DHCP. The only thing you will not do for the DHCP server is that IP stuff. You can just leave it be, it'll be fine. You don't have to do all the IP versions or the IP addressing and the gateway and all that stuff. It'll pick it up automatically. Then you need to answer all the questions under 26, A, B, C, D, and E. And then last but not least, I need a screenshot of this, the server manager. So to do that, click on the window, type in snipping, SNIPP. There it is. New. And then just get a screenshot of that. Make sure that you get the timestamp, the time and the date in the lower right-hand corner. So I need that for grading purposes. And then we'll do a copy. And then at the very end of your lab manual, you'll answer these 5 questions and throw in your screenshot. That's it. You're done. I know that you successfully installed Windows Server 2019 in a VM. Right. After you after you install your second server, your DHCP server, put a screenshot of it as well. So I'm looking for 2 screenshots here, folks. After that, make sure that you shut your system down. And that's about it. Answer these questions. Make sure you answer these questions. Now, was this a local install or a Pixie install? Well, let me give you a little bit of a hint. Did I say the word Pixie or the letters PXE at all during this tutorial up until this point? No, I didn't. Okay, so this was a local install. There's your hint for the day. All right, everybody. We'll see you around when we install Linux here in the next lab. So until then, I'm Dr. Brown. Have a good one.